Final Fantasy VII Rebirth's director weighs in on the real-time versus turn-based debate, saying that younger players increasingly favor more real-time experiences in games. I keep seeing these ideas crop up from them, essentially reiterating this point, that they're chasing younger audiences, chasing younger players. They used to set trends, and these days they're the ones chasing them. So it's kind of unfortunate. It's similar to the whole, today we're making games for modern audiences. You need to know your audience, right? And to sell anything, I suppose, and they seem to be lost. Hamaguchi still reckons that turn-based games are deeply universal. Yeah, they are. And I don't know why they've forgotten that. They keep saying these things, but they're not displaying it in their games. So this article from PC Gamer, let's have a look what they're saying here. They did an interview recently with this Hamaguchi guy. He did a Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Speaking to Game Informer, Hamaguchi said that RPGs and JRPGs are increasingly becoming viewed as legacy genres. Who told him that? I mean, I guess they've got some internal data to draw these conclusions, but maybe that's part of the problem, is they're relying too much on data and, corporate strategy to sell their products instead of actually making something that people want. This isn't to say that he necessarily prefers action games, stating that games where you evaluate the situation, contemplate your moves, and build upon the decisions you make are deeply universal, closely tied to the very nature of human thought. Yeah, I don't know if it's that deep, but sure. I mean, do more of that, right? Nonetheless, he believes the tide is turning towards more reflexive, reactive experiences, stating that when we look at younger players, they increasingly favor more real-time experiences in games. I believe they're a generation that's naturally accustomed to receiving instant feedback upon input, and you've been trying to cater to these younger players with burned-out attention spans instead of actually trying to cater to your, audience that you've built up over decades. So it's kind of stupid to be, analyzing things in that kind of way, over-analyzing, you might say, instead of actually, doing the work. As such, Hamaguchi isn't at all surprised to see games like Clair Obscur Expedition 33, great game, attempt to split the difference, offering a mix of turn-based tactics with real-time reactivity. Yeah, I like what they did in that game. A lot of people do. It's engaging. The parry system, blocking, etc., etc. But that's not to say that, you need to go down that route to make a successful turn-based game. You can look at things like Persona, which is also referenced in this article, Baldur's Gate. A lot of Square Enix's own IPs implement turn-based strategies quite successfully, like Dragon Quest, and, they show good sales year over year. So I don't know why they struggle to, do the same with Final Fantasy. It may have been inevitable for turn-based games that incorporate real-time decision-making through action elements to gain prominence. I think this reflects players' desire for both the excitement of strategy and the immediacy of response. Sure, I think it's unfortunate that these days we have, these established studios, AAA studios, that are looking at these new up-and-coming ones, although granted very successful ones, like Sandfall Interactive, who did Expedition 33, and, they're looking to them for inspiration, and they see them moving the genre forward mechanically and in terms of narrative. It must suck for them to be on the back foot in this regard, and it sucks to see it too. It's also a shift that's evident in Final Fantasy itself, though the newer FF games are more explicitly real-time than Clair Obscur. This doesn't mean later Final Fantasy games will follow suit, but the adjustment has worked well for Rebirth as well as Final Fantasy VII Remake. And Hamaguchi says that when something works well, we constantly think about ways we can carry those elements into our next title. They could have said the same thing about their own games. Their own games worked well, and they could have seen that and carried that into their future titles, but they chose not to. They saw the success, I suppose, decades prior to Devil May Cry or something, and they chose to follow those trends, right? And they lost something along the way because of that. There's another one here. It's from Yoshi P. He did the Final Fantasy Online Final Fantasy is losing younger players to longer release gaps. Yeah, they are. You know, they used to make a game every year and it was a banger after banger. And now a game takes 4, 5, 6, 7 years to make. It's hard to maintain any attachment to a series with such long development times. Same thing we could see with like Elder Scrolls, for example. They're doing Elder Scrolls 6 and there's no release date in sight. Admits that longer Final Fantasy releases are making it harder for younger players to connect with beloved JRPG series. Yeah, I have 2 younger siblings and neither of them are really invested in the lore or the gameplay, any of it. They don't really care. You know, my younger brother, he's a Roblox Minecraft addict. Let's see what else we have here. There's a version of Final Fantasy franchise that lives rent-free in the heads of millions of older players. Yeah, and that's the good version, right? That's when Final Fantasy actually made sense, unlike today. Yoshi P, one of Square Enix's most prominent public faces, is now openly acknowledging that this era is long gone and that the fallout is real. Well, it's good that, you know, they're acknowledging the issues that the fans have been harping on about for years now. You know, it's taken them a while. Maybe in 10 years we'll see a return of the franchise to something better. But for the foreseeable future, it doesn't look good, I would say. Speaking in a Square Enix YouTube video tied to the launch of mobile title Dissidia Duellum Final Fantasy, Yoshida got candid about something fans have felt for years. Younger players, he says, simply haven't had the same opportunities to form a bond with the series that older generations did. Yoshi P's honest admission, I'm 53 now and I've been playing since Final Fantasy I in real time. But for younger generations, people who grew up naturally accustomed to action-based combat and online competitive play, the recent entries in the series may have been harder to engage with. Part of that is simply because the release intervals for the new titles have gotten longer, so some players haven't really had the chance to connect with the series the way older fans did. Yeah, and that's all on you guys, right? It's all on Square Enix. Their bloated budgets, you know, winding narratives that sort of fall apart, as in the case of Final Fantasy XVI, their floundering identity. It's not a surprise that you mention Final Fantasy to a younger person and they're like, what? What's that? Or maybe they will know it. Maybe they will recognize some of the characters purely because they've collaborated with Fortnite, or maybe they've played some of those characters in Roblox or whatever. There's no mainline successor anywhere on the near horizon. Yeah, apart from that mobile game and the Part 3 Final Fantasy VII Remake, which I'm sure everyone is very excited for. Compare that to the stretch between 1987 and 1999, where Square released 10 numbered Final Fantasy titles. Wow, that output. And I bet they had smaller teams, smaller budgets. The pace was relentless, and fans were constantly pulled back in the fold. Today, a teenager could easily reach adulthood having only ever encountered 1 or 2 mainline entries. Dissidia Duellum as a bridge. Yeah, I don't know what kind of bridge this 3v3 team-based boss battler will be. Again, they're doing the same thing. They see a trend of like gacha games. They're just doing the same thing again, right? My hope is that both longtime Final Fantasy set fans and those who love the characters themselves can enjoy this as a completely new kind of game. Why do we need a completely new kind of game? Especially for younger players. So they see the problem. And yet they refuse to solve it. It's beyond me. How you can be this out of touch with your audience, especially for younger players. If this becomes a place where they can form a community, get excited together, and even discover a broader world of Final Fantasy, I think that would be amazing. Yeah, it would be amazing, but it wouldn't be Final Fantasy, right? Amazing fantasy. The author says the strategy makes sense. Final Fantasy XIV has been remarkably successful at keeping its own community engaged through regular content updates, with Square Enix continuing to push major patches like the recently revealed patch 7.5, Trail to the Heavens. But an MMO with years of back content isn't exactly the most welcoming front door for a first-time fan. It's a common thing that I've heard people say about Final Fantasy Online. It's something I experienced myself. They get into it and they're just flooded with meaningless side quests that don't really go anywhere. And I've played the game myself for a few hundred hours. I got to Stormblood, and towards the end, I just felt myself losing interest. A lot of the side quests don't mean anything. In the main missions, you're sort of the hero of light, saving everything, saving the world, and then you're told to go find a goat for some guy to unlock a flying ability on the map. I feel like the MMO is overrated, to be honest. I remember a couple of years ago there was a big falling out in the WoW community, and they all flocked to Final Fantasy. But from what I hear, a lot of them have gone back to WoW or Guild Wars 2. And I can see why, because the MMO is, the Final Fantasy MMO is more of like a visual novel rather than a game. You spend like 20% of the time playing and the other 80 just reading freaking dialogue, cliched dialogue, I might add, from cliched characters. A problem bigger than one franchise? Absolutely. Isn't exclusive to Final Fantasy. Well, no, nothing is exclusive to Final Fantasy. You can see similar trends elsewhere, like Elder Scrolls. Long development cycles have become the norm across the industry. As production costs and player expectations scale upward, I don't know if player expectations have as much to do with it as production costs and their own inability to recognize their audience and deliver what they actually have been asking for. We just want what they've already made, just more. Why is it so hard to just innovate on things that you've done before that were successful? It's a boomer mentality, right? The whole meme, hello fellow kids. Whether a mobile title can generally serve as a gateway into a franchise with 35 plus years of history is a fair question. It's not even a question. It can't. It's not going to do it. It's not going to make a dent, I would say. Kids don't give a damn about Final Fantasy because Final Fantasy isn't around. And how are you going to make it relevant? Are you going to just pump it full of content? Just endless expansions like with Final Fantasy 14, more boring side quests, more grinding. Oh no, let's do some gacha mechanics where you can pull for Cloud, pull for Tifa. Yeah, it's definitely a strategy. And Yoshida clearly sees Dissidia Duellum as a more than a side project. It's an attempt to plant a flag somewhere younger players actually spend their time. Is that online? It's like, oh, welcome to the internet. And use those beloved characters to pull them toward the bigger picture. Yeah, I'm sure they're gonna go and seek out Final Fantasy VII Remake. And if we look at sales numbers here, Square Enix hasn't been doing too great. So this is from May 14th, 2026. Genki Japan is reporting that their net sales are down 8.3%, whereas the operating income is up 34.9%. I mean, if that's not a travesty, I don't know what is. So they're spending more, making less. HD Games net sales and profits up due to games such as Final Fantasy Tactics, a turn-based game, Dragon Quest 1 and 2, turn-based games, and Dragon Quest 7, another turn-based game. And yet they want more action games to appeal to a younger audience, even though they've not sold as well. And their MMO sub-segment sales and profits down year over year. Well, at least their merch sales are up. Naoki Hamaguchi says preserving the core of OG FF7 while still making changes to create unpredictability is an important aspect of the FF7 remake trilogy. What unpredictability is he creating? Is it more action combat? Because I don't know what else they're gonna do. Since we're telling this story as a trilogy, it's essential to keep players engaged until the very end. For that reason, we've structured the narrative so that the central question, whether the protagonist's fates will truly change, remains unresolved until the very end. Okay, so just some narrative quirks, nothing gameplay related. However, this doesn't mean that everything can change. From the outset, we've decided that we couldn't promise the emotional core of the characters or the fundamental themes the story poses to players. However, this doesn't mean that everything can change. from the outset, we decided that we couldn't compromise the emotional core of the characters or the fundamental themes the story poses to players. I would say they have compromised the narrative in the games by changing characters such as Sid and the dog character, what's his name, Red. There are elements we've changed to create that pulse-pounding sense of unpredictability, and elements that allow those familiar with the original to feel that this is truly FF7. I don't know how many people felt that this is truly FF7, and I don't see why there's this modern obsession with, doing remakes. I'd say that's another indicator of creative bankruptcy and a general struggle to identify what your audience actually is asking for. Let's see what some people are saying. I can't help but think this approach has backfired on the devs. People who understood it was a remake all along aren't being affected by all the red herrings, fake deaths. People who were fooled are now pissed that the game is turning into a spicy remake, and the purists are pissed that there were changes to begin with. Not a great idea to fracture the fan base. The final product that the re-trilogy becomes will be studied for years to come on how to approach a remake. I guess the devs got their wish in that regard. Well said, Faded. Yeah, we're gonna learn how to not make a remake, right? We're gonna learn that if you want to remake a game, you need to not change the gameplay, but evolve it. We're gonna learn that if you want to make a remake, you need to not change the characters and what they represent in the story, but you need to go deeper into who they are and explore them more instead of turning them into clowns. Unfortunately, I believe there is no comeback after FF7 Rebirth. The story was a disaster and the character's development was so bad it seems surreal. Only Barrett had a realistic emotional performance. Again and again the industry ruins a gold mine ready for use. True, true. Yeah, we've seen this in so many franchises, right? People liked Silent Hill 2 Remake. Not a fan. I played the original before that one came out, and just comparing the two, you can tell they put a lot of work into it, but it's similar to what they've done here, where they've changed the gameplay so much, and they've injected their own ideas into the story that weren't there before, thereby messing with things, that shouldn't be messed with. Anyway, I hope you're excited for all the exciting things and fantastic things that Square Enix are cooking up for you. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is coming to Switch too. Wow, look at that. Yeah, and this mobile game. Wow, Android and iOS. I hope you're excited. And Final Fantasy XIV Evercold. That's the MMO, the newest expansion. More visual novel slop. I'm not hating on you guys who enjoy this game. It just didn't click with me. I found it boring. Not enough gameplay. Anyway, this that's the online game. Anyway, let's take a look at this mobile game, Dissidia Duellum. Is this Tifa? Well, do you want to pull for Tifa? How much are you going to spend to get this outfit for Tifa? You're going to be a good little pay piggy for Square Enix? You're going to pull Cloud? You're going to pull off Cloud? No homo. Wow, look at that. Raise level cap. I wonder how much that will cost. So yeah, Square Enix, you're on the right track. This is exactly what the younger audience are vying for. They want to play your Final Fantasy gacha slop on their iPad. I'm sure there's going to be some 50-year-old virgin whale out there who's going to splash all his income on your game, but I'm not going to be one of them, and I hope you're not going to give him your hard-earned money either until they actually put some effort into delivering a good story with engaging, turn-based strategic combat, and yeah, vote with your wallet.